Testing, 1, 2, 3. And now time to spam this everywhere.
Okay, I think that's working.
Now we're streaming. Okay.
Shall we try that again, this well-oiled machine?
Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about the Nova Open. All three of us went to Nova to play Age of Sigmar. We are going to do a quick introduction. So I am Gareth, or Tom, or Thommo, or G-Tom. I'm part of the Old Town Throwdown team and sort of a TO that runs a lot of events in Southern California. Noog, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, what's poppin', people? So my name is Matt Wynn, and I go by as Roz on online social media, but I'm also infamously known as the Noog, apparently. But I mainly go by Matt, and I play for Sakal United, West Coast, Best Coast.
Well, that's going to be a tough intro to follow, but my name is Matthew Barker. I go by Salamander on Discord. I'm part of the Corsair Warhammer gaming group. Also play other games too, but primarily Age of Sigmar these days. I main Nurgle typically, and originally from New England, longtime DC resident, and a little bit new out here to Southern California, and I was happy to be adopted by my new Southern California Age of Sigmar family. So that's me.
Well, that's a nice segue, Barker. You've been to Nova before, right?
I have. So yeah, like I said, I moved to Southern California about a year ago, but previous to that, I lived in DC area, Northern Virginia for about 15 years.
So why don't you tell us about Nova?
Sure. So the Nova Open is one of the bigger events for Age of Sigmar and Warhammer in general in the country. Certainly one of the most popular on the East Coast. It's I'd call it one of the big three, right? You've got Nova on the East, you've got Adepticon in the Midwest, and then you've got LVO sort of in the West Coast or the western part of the country. So it happens every year on Labor Day weekend. It's a fantastic event. It actually started as a backyard barbecue 40K tournament that Mike Brandt set up for charitable reasons with, I think, like maybe 14 or 20 people playing outdoor Warhammer. And in a span of, I believe, 12 or 13 years, it's blossomed or ballooned into this exceptional event that we experienced just a few weeks ago. It's held in Arlington, Virginia, which is right across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C., in between D.C. and Alexandria, Virginia, where I lived for about 15 years. And traditionally, it's been held in one hotel, the Hyatt in Crystal City. This year is the first year that it expanded to a second location in addition, right across the street. So it's a great venue, great location, really accessible. And yeah, right in the middle of the Mid-Atlantic. So
By accessible, you mean it's pretty much walking distance from the airport, which is great. There's somebody flying in just to be able to be right there, not have to worry about how do you get from the airport to the venue. Yeah, it really was good.
yeah, and not only that, but there's a really robust metro subway system in DC, and there's a Crystal City Metro Station is like a 15-minute walk. I took Nuge here on a foray into the city. But yeah, so if you wanted to head into the city, you can hop on the subway, and it's just like a 20-minute train ride. You can Uber into the city, and it's not that expensive either. And there's plenty of entertainment within walking distance of the venue if you just wanted to do something a little closer to the area. So
I know that's something that a lot of the people traveling into the event, certainly a lot of the Sigma players that I was speaking to who were traveling into DC, had never been to DC before, and so yeah, took the opportunity to go and see the sites and then play some Sigma. It's a great location.
And an unsung location that I don't think a lot of people make it into because they're usually enamored with going into Washington is Old Town Alexandria is 2 metro stops away, probably a 10-minute drive from the venue, and it is such a fantastic part of the town that kind of transports you back to an era long gone, port city, Alexandria. So absolutely great location, great venue, and that's one of my big pros of the Nova event in general is the location. As you said, it's really accessible to the airport.
Okay. So this year they started something new, I think, which was the Nova Invitational for Sigma. Noog, why don't you tell us about that? Because you were actually one of the invitees.
Oh, so pretty much I was hit up by one of the Team America guys, or I guess one of the organizers of the event, and they messaged me over Discord being like, "Hey, since I know that you're the while you're not the only SoCal representative going to Nova, but we really want to have you on the Invitational because we heard a lot about you, and yeah, do you want to play?" And then I said, "Yeah, for sure." I was actually thinking about not playing because the idea of potentially playing, let's say eight games in one weekend was is a lot. But thankfully, sadly, even though I would love to talk more about the Invitational, I went through round one. I was playing against Tom Guan, and that was a really quick game because I just missed a point against his Fire Slayers because he was running the Bill Souza build with 3 Magadroths, two 10 Hearthguard Berserkers, and the wall that blocks movement. So having missed a point against that, I think I was just out of it because I was not familiar with the matchup too much, and I was also dealing with jet lag the previous day. But the eventual winner of the Invitational, just to go a little bit into it, was Jeremy Vessier with 6 Grimwrath Berserkers, who everyone thought was a meme build, but apparently it's not a meme. So during all of this, I actually got to travel around DC with Mr. Barker here, who took me around, and we really missed you there, Tom, because last time I've been to DC, it was about 2010, so I was in high school, so I didn't really remember too much about DC besides it maybe not being as nice as I expected. But I'm so glad I went this time because DC was a lot nicer than I expected. Weather was great. The humidity was nice. We got to meet one of Barker's close friends, who I think who used to work with you in forestry or just like managing the Washington D.C. grounds. So that was really cool. And then we went into the Smithsonian, where we just learned about things and yeah, did a lot of good sightseeing. So I highly recommend, if anyone has time, definitely travel to DC. And even though I'm sad I didn't play beyond round one, I'm actually really glad that it happened because I got to spend a lot of time with Matt, who I don't get to see too much because we're both busy and everything. But yeah, that was a lovely time.
Yeah, it's quite funny because playing 5 or 6 games of Warhammer wasn't the nerdiest thing we did all weekend. We went to the Museum of Natural History and walked around the Capitol building, and I'm sure Nooch had enough tree talk to last him a lifetime in a span of about 3 hours because. Like he said, I used to be the arborist for the U.S. Capitol grounds, tree climber out there, and so I was just walking around and be like, "Yeah, I climbed that tree. Oh, there used to be a tree over here," and so it was pretty funny. I'm sure he's had enough of that to last him a lifetime. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with you, man. That was a great day. I had a lot of great time.
We gotta have more times like that again for sure.
Totally, totally.
Just to fill in some details, so the Invitational was a one-day event that happened before the main GT, where they invited 16, was it 16 or 8?
16. No, it's
So.
16.
16 of the top players and Matt to come and play. And it was a knockout tournament, so as soon as you lost a game, you were gone for the day. And it ended up Jeremy won by the end. And it's tough because you play those 3 games, and then the next day, literally, you've got the GT, which is another 5 games over 2 days. And then if you really wanted to, they had an RTT the day after that as well. So you could end up playing 11 games over 4 days.
Yeah, and
You
the
really
eventual winner of Nova actually did play 11 games because he was also in the Invitational. But I'm not going to spoil who won that until we go into
yeah.
it later. Yeah, I mean, it was a good time. I was hoping I wasn't paired against SoCal because I was talking to Tom and I was just like, you know what? Let's take this shit to the finals. And then, of course, they pair the only Asians in round one, and I'm just like, and we're both from SoCal, so I'm just like,
The only Asians and the only SoCal representatives at the Invitational, you and Tom Guan, and they paired you against each other round one.
they were too afraid.
Yeah.
I did get invited to play in the Invitational, but basically for the reasons that Nuge laid out, I didn't think I could play that much Warhammer over the course of 3 days. And I was just worried about actually hurting my chances in the GT by playing 3 games before and just being mentally, worn out. So
Yeah. It's also, I mean, for anyone who lives on the West Coast and has to travel to the East Coast for work or anything like that, they start these events at 8 a.m. East Coast time. Well, for us, that's 5 a.m. It's pretty brutal, particularly if you've flown in the night before. It can be tough.
East Coast bias. East Coast bias.
Yeah, everything's stacked up against us, clearly. Okay, so that takes us on to the GT. The GT was a pretty standard 2-day tournament for Sigma. 3 games on the first day, followed by 2 games on the second day. Random pairings throughout those 5 games within win bracket. So it was at no point was it Swiss seeded. And then the top 8 players after the 5 rounds were invited to play a 6th game on the second day. And then after that, the remaining 4 players, because the 4 losers from that 6th round were knocked out, were then in knockout elimination on the 3rd day, playing another 2 games to get to the final. But without any spoilers, none of us managed to get into the top 8, although we were close. But so we just all played 5 games in the GT. So why don't we start with you, Barker? Why don't you go through your 5 games, or talk about your list, what you took, and how your 5 games went?
Sure. So I said at the beginning that I pretty much main Nurgle. I have for quite some time. I love the army. I love all the iterations that you can build, especially in the new book, which is just, I know everybody tends to, most people have probably been introduced to Nurgle by playing 14 Pusco Blight Lords, but the book has, once that little hiccup is sorted out, the book has an incredible diversity of builds that are possible. And so my list was a Drowned Men subfaction, shocker. Um, and I played my list. My 4 characters were the Lord of Afflictions. He had the overpowering stench command trait, and the artifact was the Shield of Growths. And the Shield of Growths is actually, I don't think I've seen anybody ever run it in a GT before. It's a defensive artifact. Most people play the Splithorn Helm, which gives them a 4-up ward. The Shield of Growths allows him to reroll armor saves based on the number of wounds that are currently allocated to him. So, for example, if he has 3 wounds allocated to him, he can reroll save rolls of 1, 2, and 3. So it works really great against a meta where the Purple Sun and everybody's trying to stack Rend to counteract save stacking. So it's kind of a counter. And then my other 3 characters were Orgot's Demon Spew, who's one of the Magath Lords, Bloab Rotspond, who's also another Magath Lord, and then Gutrot Spume. And Gutrot Spume, again, kind of a pick that you don't see too often. He allows up to 3 mortal Magakin and Nurgle units to outflank from the board edge, which essentially means they can come in from the board edges within 6 inches and then 9 inches away from your opponent. And then my other choices in the army list were 2 units of 5 Blight Kings in Expert Conquerors, 2 units of the Puscoil Blight Lords in Bounty Hunters. That tallied up to about 1920, not about, exactly 1920. And my 3 characters, Spume, Lord of Afflictions, and one of the Magath Lords was in a command entourage. And my additional enhancement was a second triumph. And I took both triumphs were reroll charges. So I had a very low pointed list to try and secure both of those triumphs so that when either Spume and up to 3 units come in from the board edge, or the Lord of Afflictions can also deep strike with the 2 units of Blight Lords, any combination up to those 6 or 7 units, they either drop in or come off the edge. I can have up to 2 units re-rolling their 9-inch charge. And also Orgot's Demon Spew can issue a command for free every turn. So potentially up to half of those units re-rolling their 9-inch charge. So that was my general strategy. I did manage to get both my triumphs in all of my games. The first thing I did when all the lists were public was go through every single list and figure out who had lower points than me. And there were a couple of crazy people that were running 1900 and 1915. So that was kind of fun. So that was my army list, and the tournament kicked off, and I played. My first game was a fantastic game. I played Walter. Let me pull this up real quick. Sorry for the delay. He was playing in Ossiarch Bone Reaper's army, which he was the only Ossiarch Bone Reaper player in the whole tournament. His name was Walter Brock, and we were playing. The first mission was Tom. You're gonna have to help me out here if you don't mind.
Sure. The close to the chest.
Close to the chest. Yeah, that's with the 6 objectives and sort of the L-shaped deployment zone.
Yes.
Yeah, so this was interesting. So basically, my thought process going into every game is, okay, what 3 units am I going to bring off the edge with Gutrot Spume? Because I can bring the Magath Lords, I can bring the Pusco Blight Lords, I can bring the Blight Kings. Typically, I'm bringing the Blight Kings, right? And that's what I did in this mission. Because they're expert conquerors and they're really slow otherwise. So this allows me to basically get around their big weakness, which is their 4-inch move, and really attack an opponent's home objectives with models that count as 30 on objectives. So that's what I did. He had a unit of 20 of the Mortek Guard in Bounty Hunters, and those guys, even though they're basic skeletons, they can really stack buffs with lots of rend. And with Bounty Hunters against my Blight King Galatian veterans, I had to be really careful not to get caught out. We played a little game of chicken at the end, but I was able to basically draw some of his forces and get caught up with the Pusco Blight Lords and the Blight Kings, and I was able to make the charge and then really put a hurting on the number uh, of the skeletons, the Mortek Guard that could fight back. The crawler wasn't too effective against me because I have a natural resilience with the ward save. So basically, just grinded out a win against a really great opponent. And he actually ended up going on to win the next 4 games after the loss to me. So kudos to him for, he said it was his first tournament. So kudos to him for not getting discouraged and then really plowing ahead the rest of the tournament. The second,
4-1 with OBR is amazing for anyone, and to do it in your first tournament, fantastic effort. Oh, you muted yourself somehow.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
There you go. Nope. Still can't hear you, Matt.
Is your wireless headset unplugged, or is the USB?
That's a typical Noog statement. Is your wireless headset unplugged?
Okay, wait. Okay. Come on.
there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you now.
That's good.
Sorry about that. So going into this tournament, I was 9-1 with this particular list, with a 4 wins at an Old Town Throwdown event, and then a 3-0 at another Old Town Throwdown event. And my only loss at this point was to Thunder Lizards and Tom Guan. Well, spoiler alert, my second loss with this list is to Thunder Lizards, but it was this game, number 2, against opponent Michael Sabetti. Man, what a great, fun-loving guy this guy was. I had a lot of fun playing him. And the story of this matchup, which was this was the mission with the 3 objectives in in the presence of idols was this mission, and it's 3 objectives in a diagonal. You get bonus points for killing the idol units, and you get some battle shock bonus, which is not really that consequential. But the story of this game was me making 2 critical mistakes, but more importantly, my opponent recognizing those mistakes and brutally punishing me for them, which is really smart on his part. Essentially, I had my 2 units of Blight Kings with Gutrot Spume, and I was going to attack my far left objective up in the corner because all he had in that area was 5 Saurus Knights. So my plan was to come off the board edge, make one of those 9-inch charges, clear the Knights, own that objective for probably the rest of the game, because he had all 3 of his the Stegodon, the Engine, and the Bastillodon off to the other side, and as well the 30 Skinks off to the other side. So he has really weak side up top. And then I was just going to put the 2 Magath Lords, the 4 Flies, the Lord of Affliction in the center, and just sit on 2 out of the 3 objectives, and have him come to me and not be able to get through me. I didn't think he'd be able to. For seemingly no reason, I abandoned that plan, and I brought the Blight Kings on the complete opposite end of the board. I got a little sidetracked with a potential 6-point turn with the 3-point battle tactic with Bards Through Their Land. I really love Bards Through Their Lands with Spume because it allows me to get a 3-point battle tactic pretty easy. And that cost me dearly. I didn't make either of the 9-inch charges, and especially with the rerolls. And so that hurt. I did get the double, and then I failed to retreat with the Lord of Afflictions to stop his redeploy. So when I moved the first Blight King unit up, he got a 6-inch redeploy, and those 10 Blight Kings, a quarter of my army, was just hoofing it, chasing opponents down. He purple sunned Orgots. He killed Bloab in the same turn with a Stegodon, and that was pretty much it. So he capitalized on my mistakes and made me pay for them. So hats off to him. It was such a fun game, and that was the first time Orgots Demon Spew got sunned at this tournament. Um, and
Spoiler alert.
so spoiler alert. That's, for everybody watching at home, that's the first time. So my third game, I really want, I going into this tournament, much like I'm sure you did, Noog, and you did, Tom, had aspirations of going 5-0 and making the top cut. I think I really had a good shot at that. I felt really great about my list, and so it's a little disappointing to kind of see that realization probably come to an end so early. But I had a really great game 3 against Mackenzie Ewing, and man, I have been in this hobby since about 1999. And this game against Mackenzie, I have never, ever, ever played a game against an opponent who had such a great attitude, even in the face of adversity, as Mackenzie, because he was on his back foot from the bottom of turn 1, but he scrapped and he fought for every single point, and it was refreshing, right? A lot of times, if you can sort of punch your opponent in the teeth, get a really good or demoralizing charge or combat off, you can just tell their energy is just, kind of broken. This guy never quit. So it was a great game. He's playing Sylvaneth Heartwood, which a lot of people are these days. And he had Durthu with the D3 extra attack artifact. He had the Warsong Revenant, trying to remember the rest of his list. He had 6 of the Revenant Seekers, the new Revenants on the flies. He had a 3-pack of Scythe Hunters, a couple of Tree Revenants, because they're probably one of the best battle line units in the game, and uh, and I think that was pretty much it. And he did the typical thing that Sylvaneth is doing these days, where he juices up his Durthu, gets plus. He made one big mistake, which was accidentally casting Mystic Field instead of the Spite Swarm Hive, which gives them +3 to charge. But he still made the 9-inch charge even without the Spite Swarm Hive, and he ate a unit of Pusco of Blightlords and then struck and faded away. So take out a key unit and then back off. I will say I was pretty proud of myself for this move, where I moved the Lord of Afflictions towards his Durthu because he was on the board edge, blocking me from bringing Spume on. Lord of Afflictions moves up, but outside of overpowering stench range on purpose. So then he redeployed back, which allowed me to bring Spume on, which was I was actually kind of proud of that. And then the first 9-inch charge I failed. I then used a Triumph, rolled it into an 11, and the second charge I rolled a natural 11. So I had 10 Blight Kings that just sort of took out his Durthu right away. Managed to get the double turn, pushed into his territory. And just started kind of picking around the edges, using the Lord of Afflictions to move up the board 14 inches with an auto run 6, shut off redeploy for something, and then pounce on that unit. I think I had the unit of 6 Revenant Seekers down to 1 model, I think 3 times during the game. And between Virtuous Harmony and their ability to regrow themselves, and then rally, because this was the mission where every unit got a +1 to their rally and a 5. I think I had that unit down to 1 model 3 times. Orgots would run up, smack maybe 3 or 4 of those bugs out of there, and then they would just regrow. So by the end of the game, that was the only thing he had left, was 6 of those bugs. But it was a great game, and I had a really great time playing him. So ended the day 2-1, which was great. And then round 4, I played a guy who I've been really looking forward to playing. He's always playing tournaments on the East Coast, Joe Schumacher. I've seen him at various events, never got a chance to play, so I was really excited. He's playing Caradron Overlords, and I'm very familiar with that army. That's my other army when I'm not playing Nurgle, and I join the guys on Aethercast from time to time. So very familiar with the army. He's playing a Zilfin list with an Ironclad, a bunch of the heroes in it as well. 10 Thunderers in the Ironclad, a frigate, a couple of gun haulers, the Purple Sun. The Admiral had the Arcane Tome, and he also had flaming weapon on the Admiral. So that Admiral, that little angry dwarf, is doing 4 damage a swing potentially on 2s and 2s Ren 2. So you think he's just a little dwarf hero, but man, he can be quite dangerous. So um, unfortunately for Joe, he drew Nurgle on probably the worst matchup mission, which is Realmstone Cache. That
Yeah.
is, it's like drawing KO and Silk Steel Nest, which I did at Boise Cup. So drawing Nurgle on Realmstone Cache is just very unfortunate for him. So essentially, all I did was pile all my guys around the center objective. So whenever it blew up, I was going to be in position um, to take it, and that's ended up what happening. It blew up. It landed right on top of 5 Expert Conqueror Blight Kings. And then once I knew the position of the objectives, I was able to just lock it down with Blight Kings. And then the great weakness of KO is that they have all their characters in their boats. And the great strength of the Pusco Blight Lords is that whenever they do impact hits, they do impact hits to each unit within 1. So whenever I charge in, so I was summoning beasts. So I had 2 or 3 beasts on the board. I had 2 or 3 Pusco Blight Lords, and when they would all charge in, I was doing up to 4 or 5 D3 mortal wounds to literally everything. His Thunderers, the 3 characters, the boats. So
Oh, so that's how disease or that spell works. The boat. Wow. Okay, that's
no.
pretty
So
radical.
that's just impact hits. So like when the beasts or the blight lords charge into a boat, they do impact hits on a 2-up or a 4-up, but they do it to each unit within 1. And so if I charge the boat, I do
Okay.
impact hits to everything in the boat, which is yeah. So I use that to my advantage. Orgot sliced a couple of gun haulers in half. The Blight Kings managed to get a long bomb charge into a frigate and took that in 1 turn. Basically, at the end of the game, he had an Ironclad and a couple heroes left. And I was ahead on points. I think I had a couple of 6-point turns in there, and yeah, that was a great game against a great opponent. Just a tough draw for Joe, drawing Nurgle on Realmstone Cache. So with a 4-1 in my sights, I was I drew Justin Haglin, and unfortunately for me, I played a Night Haunt army, and I had never played the new Night Haunt, even though my teammate Alex Gonzalez is a Night Haunt main. So luckily, I have listened to him talk a lot about Night Haunt lately in the book and how it builds. And this was on Silk Steel Nest. A typical Scarlet Doom army that you're going to see. He had 2 units of 5 Hex Rays, 2 units of 20 Blade Geist, 2 of the Crusaders, which an amazing buff. The Crusaders to an aura of -1 damage and an aura that stacks. That's
Yeah.
crazy. That's crazy. So he had an aura of -2 damage, shielding his Blade Geist in a spell that was -1 to be wounded, and they can't be obviously immune to Ren. So man, this was going to be tough. He gave me first turn, and I basically did not advance. I had to cover 4 objectives. I had 8 units, and I had 3 off the board. So I had 5 units on the board to cover 4 objectives. So I did not advance at all. I kind of put my Lord of Afflictions up a little bit because he is incredibly tough with a 3-up base save. And I said again, his artifact, being able to re-roll save rolls starting at a 3-up base save is just incredibly, incredibly resilient to non-mortal wound ranged weapons. So 10 Blight Kings came off the edge, made one of the 9-inch charges, cleared the Hex Rays, owned that objective. I can't burn it on turn 1, but I was in a great. What I was able to do was that mission is really hard to get a 3-point turn, or I'm sorry, a 5-point turn round 1 because you have 4, they have 4,
Yeah.
and but I was able to clear the Hex Rays and then get the 5-point turn, which is great. He ended up basically castling in the middle, waiting for a double turn, getting within. He was very good about measuring what I would need to do to be able to charge you at the top of 2. So he castled in the middle. I won priority, so I did not give him the double turn. And I was able to just start basically kind of collapsing. I had to kind of make a decision right then and there. Do I charge into his 40 Blade Geist, 4 hero castle, or do I play it safe and wait for him to charge me? So I just decided to send everything. All 4 flies, both Magath Lords. Of course, the first thing I sent, learning from my game 2, was the Lord of Afflictions just right into the middle, shutting down redeploy. Everything else advanced up. So when I charged in the Lord of Afflictions, I was able to shut off all command abilities. Most importantly, his command ability that allows him a 5-up ward
Yep.
and increases resilience. Luckily, and unfortunately for him, he had put one single Blade Geist within 14-inch range of probably the best spell in the game, I think, maybe. Miasma Pestilence. If you don't know what that does, it's Bloab Rotspawn's War Scroll spell. And every phase that target unit takes damage, they take an additional D3 mortal wounds at the end of the phase. So if you can do if you tag them in the hero phase with that spell, if you hit them with an arcane bolt, they take damage, they take an additional D3 on a 2-up, and then the shooting phase, and then the charge phase with impact hits, and then the combat phase, and then the battle shock phase with disease, and then it's until my next hero phase. So it's quite potent. He had one Blade Geist, like maybe by a half an inch in range of 14 inches. So I tagged one of the units with that, sent everything in. With the Lord of Affliction shutting off Inspiring Presence, you don't typically see Death Armies lose models to Battle Shock, but he rolled 6 on his Battle Shock roll and lost an entire unit of Blade Geist, and the other one was brought down to a theme of the day, a theme of the tournament, one model. Well, that Blade Geist unit by the end of the game had about 12 or 15 models in it, so it was kind of disappointing. But I was able to burn one of the objectives and just kind of just keep pushing and bottling him in, holding all 4 of mine with some summoning and zoning, and I ended up getting 3 6-point turns in a row by burning objectives, keeping him to 3 4-point turns in a row, and then was able to secure the win. Go 4-1, which I was proud of, and yeah, that's about it.
Was he taking? There's a Night Haunt sub faction that allows them to ignore wards. Was he playing that, which can be pretty nasty against Nurgle?
Yeah, it absolutely can, and that's what I think I passed you, and you're like, "Well, enjoy your ward save," and I was like,
Yeah.
"What? Oh my god!" No, no, he was playing Scarlet Doom, which the Blade Geists
Okay.
are battle line, and they do impact hits. The one you're thinking of is this something silver, and then Quicksilver.
Yeah.
And usually people play the Herodons because the Dreadscythe Herodons because they're battle line and they have a crap load of attacks. But no, so he was playing the Scarlet Doom.
Okay. So 4-1.
Yeah, he stunned Orgots that game. He also stunned the Lord of Afflictions, and he also stunned Gutrot Spume. Still managed to get the win. And then Joe Schumacher stunned Orgots as well. So Orgots Demon Spew got stunned 3 games out of my 5. And it was pretty wild. I told Joe, I said, "Hey, listen, I got a buddy coming. He doesn't play Warhammer. I haven't seen him in a couple years since I've been on the East Coast. So, I might be a little rude to you for like 2 minutes and just, give him a hug and say hi. I'll be right back in the game." He's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. If I roll this 1, it's all good." And he rolled the 1 and stunned Orgots. So I couldn't be mad at that.
Okay. So 4-1. Pretty happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I certainly felt really great about my list. I've played it a lot. It's had success. I think Gutrot Spume doesn't get utilized a lot because people see the 9-inch charges as sort of a long shot. But if I can mitigate that somehow with a couple of triumphs, and also people tend to think, "Oh, come off the board edge," so they're thinking the opponent's backboard edge, right? Like, well, how often is somebody going to leave you an opening? But for the most part, I come off the sides, and my opponent has to make a decision. Are they going to dedicate units to fighting 10 Blight Kings? And then sort of now I've split their forces and I can sort of use that to my advantage. Or do they, ignore it and let 10 Blight Kings run on their objectives, their expert conquerors? So I can really learn a lot about an opponent very quickly, what they value, what they don't value, what's their play style, and then use that in my decision making for the rest of the game. So I'll stop talking. I'm sorry. I could talk about Nurgle and builds and how great Gutrot Spume is for hours. So
Matt, why don't you go ahead? I mean, other Matt.
Oh, well, I guess before I start off, well, I mean, I think a lot of people are also here to hear you talk about trays, so it works out, Barker. So I guess I guess we could just pull up my list for everybody
Yep.
to
What's
see.
up?
Okay, so I'm playing Beast of Chaos. So Beast of Chaos, essentially, if you don't know what that is, it's an Age of Sigmar Chaos army where it's the best description about them is it's a army of angry farm animals that just hate the world and everything. But anyways, the primary thing about Beast of Chaos to know about what their themes are for the faction is it's a lot of wound density. So there's usually in a list I'll have about 150 to 200 wounds in a list. So it's a big horde army, and then it has very good summoning. So because the army has very low saves, like the best save in this army is a 4-up save. Maybe a 3-up with the Demon Prince, but outside of that, it's just literally a 4-up save. Things die very quickly in the army. However, because things die very quickly in this army, we make it up by having a lot of high rend that just goes straight through army saves. So I think they with the White Dwarf recently, which was back in March, March or February, they made it so that we're anti saves because at the start of the edition there was a lot of issues where save stacking, where a bunch of people can keep getting +1 to save, where -1 Ren was not cutting it out anymore. So they introduced this for Beast of Chaos to actually be like, hey, here's the counter to high armor saves. But anyways, to go through the list now, now that you guys have an idea of how Beast of Chaos is. So I opted to go no sub faction because my build is really reliant around my spells and endless spells going off because the spell lore of BOC or Beast of Chaos is very strong, but we have 0 pluses to cast. So I want to make sure I want to get every buff off. So that's why I went Masters of Magic on my General Shaggoth, who has Arcane Tome, so that'll give him a second cast. And then, in addition, I have Cogs in the list, which lets everyone wholly within 12 reroll casts. So I have 3 casters. One of them has 2 casts. Everyone has 1 cast. So if I get all my spells off, it makes it really effective because to mitigate the fact that my army has low armor saves, I add a lot of crowd control. If you don't know what crowd control is, essentially it's just defensive things, or it just lets me control the board while it keeps my army alive. So one of the control pieces is the Wildfire Taurus, and essentially moves 12, and it makes you fight last if you're within 3 inches of it, and you take more wounds. And this goes off every single hero phase. So at the end of the movement, or not the end of the movement, end of the hero phase, it just keeps hitting you for mortals and for fight last. And then just to go through the rest of the list, so my general has Hailstorm. So what that does is if it goes off, it makes a unit within 21 inches have move, have run, have charge. I take that because it combos with the Demon Prince's Corn Demon Prince, by the way, command ability for half run, half charge. So there's some games where someone gets within 3 inches of me, but because if I hit them with Hailstorm and the Demon Prince aura, it's like, all right, well, your 3-inch charge became a 12-inch charge. So yeah, it's kind of nasty for combat armies. And then I have a second Shaggoth who has Horn of the Tempest. That makes dragon ogres and run and charge. I really need that sometimes if I get given first and I want to alpha something, so that's why I take it. And he has Sundering Blades to give a BOC unit extra rend. And then Zongor Shaman has Wild Rampage. It's reroll wounds for any BOC unit wholly within 12, but -1 save. So to go through the rest of the list, I have 3 Dragon Ogres with paired weapons, so that gives them 6 attacks each. I have 6 Dragon Ogres with 6 paired ancient weapons. So they're in Bounty Hunters. What Bounty Hunters is that it gives 3 units in a battalion +1 damage against GVs, or which is like battle line that is infantry or around 4 wounds or less. And then I have 2 units of 10 Gores and Expert Conquerors. I have 1 unit of 10 Gores and Expert Conquerors. And then I have 6 Bulgors. They're there for cracking through high armor saves. And I have 6 Zongor Enlightened who reroll everything if something fights before them within 3 inches. And yeah, this list is just a lot of layering with endless spells, chaff, summoning, and hitting you hard with my Bounty Hunters and just playing for the board. So yeah.
What weapons did you give your Bulgors, Matt?
I gave them great axes. So essentially what a great axe is it's 2 attacks each. It basically -2 rend base, but because a Herdstone gives +1 to rend, it's -3 from battle round 1 to battle round 2, and then when it gets to battle round 3 and beyond, it goes to rend 4. So they're just there to crack through high armor saves like Stormcast, Slaves to Darkness, and other things like that. So
you're talking Bulgors with rend 4, 3 damage attacks?
Yeah,
Nasty.
pretty much.
Nasty.
Yeah, it's spicy, so I mean that's why I take it. Yeah.
And so how did your games go?
So I guess let's start off with round 1. So now I gave everybody a good idea of the list. So my round 1 opponent was none other than Jordan Duncan from Season of War. So he took Ideneth and he took Morphon. So essentially he took an Achillean King, Ishran Soul Scryer, Ishran Soul Render, one blob of 20 Reavers, which are the archers, one blob of 10 Reavers, another blob of 10 Reavers, and 30 Thralls, which are the melee elves. And then he took a Kronspite Incarnate. And then essentially what his list does is Morphon is that he can bring the Soul Scryer can choose one unit to bring back D3 plus 3 units a turn. So, and that happens at the end of every combat phase, in your turn and your opponent's turn. So the army is a lot tankier than it seems, especially because Ideneth really struggle with durability, but they make it up by when they get to round 3, they fight first before everybody else. So essentially we were playing close to the chest, and I knew that I was on a deadline where if I did not take care of the Incarnate before round 3 or kill any of his stuff, he was probably going to table me by turn 3, because that's just how his list ultimately works. It's looking to double you. It's looking to just get priority to just like smash you. It's not looking for a long game, but it can play for a long game. So round 1, he gets me first. I buff up 3 of my Dragon Ogres with extra rend and reroll wounds, and then I just send it straight forward behind with the Shagoff with not reroll charges, run and charge within 18 inches. I sent the 3 Dragon Ogres in and degrades the Incarnate in 1 turn. So obviously Jordan did expect that, so he was forced to play a lot more aggressively than he wanted to. So he puts down everything from the Deep Strike or the Sea, and then throughout 5 turns, we just start trading units constantly, and then at the end of battle round 1, his Incarnate manages to kill all my Dragon Ogres, and then I was afraid that if he doubles me, the game might have been over there, but he didn't, because for some reason I just opted to roll 6s for the rest of this round 1 game against Jordan Duncan. So then after that, I set in my Zongor's Enlightened to smack the Incarnate after I made it fight last with the Endless Spell. He failed to eat the Endless Spell, and then he died. So then I was like, okay, I'm in a pretty good spot. However, he has 2 big blocks of shooting where he just peppers me throughout like the course of the game, and then I managed to roll really hot on the armor saves, where if I succeeded on 1 or 2 more armor saves, I would have saved that unit, and then I would have 4-up rallied, and which is pretty crucial against shooting, and which is what makes BOC really good against shooting. And then I went another prio into turn 3. I send all my I send another 1 Dragon Ogre, my Demon Prince, and then I summon a unit of Bestigors to just tie down the shooting. And because it was turn 3, he was fighting first with everything. So while I was able to like kill his screen, the 10 Bestigors that charged his 30 block of Reavers, because he fought first, he was actually able to kill 5 out of 10 of those Bestigors, which actually reduces their output by a lot. Because when Bestigors charge, especially Horde units, they get +1 to attack, reroll hit rolls of 1, especially against Order. And then also, he has a ritual where turn 3, all of his Namarti, all of his foot dudes, get a 5-up ward. And that definitely makes a difference between surviving, I guess, against weight of attacks from my army or just like anything else. And because of that 5-up ward, his guys were a lot more resilient. And most of his guys are just on a 5 or a 4-up save. Again, and now I was like Ren 3 right now. But even though that would have mattered, the 5-up ward definitely saved him. And then we continued to grind through each other throughout the game. And then eventually, round 4, he set his king into my Bulgors and Chaff Unit. His king, I think he split attacks, so I think he definitely got greedy because he underestimated the output of Bulgors. He kills 3 out of 6 Bulgors, and the 3 Bulgors proceed to just off him in one go with Ren 4, 3 damage each. And then, however, even though if I killed a king, most of my army was dead, while he was still bringing back D3 plus 3 Reavers or Thralls every single turn. So at some point, it got to turn 5, and I had to make a gamble move. However, he positioned all of his guys by the boat, which gives another 5-up ward. And then because of that, I was forced to charge him, didn't kill as many as I would have liked, and then he was able just to clear off the rest of the army at the bottom of 5. So that was a really close game, and the differential of that was only like 12-9. So yeah, really fun game against Jordan. Lovely opponent. His voice was dead, so sometimes when he wanted to communicate hitting and wounding, he would just do like hitting on 3s with his fingers and then wounding on 4s or something. But yeah, no, it was a good game. And then even though I really didn't want to pair against like, a dangerous opponent round 1, I'm actually really thankful that I did because I learned a lot from that game. And I think when you travel to events like these, you always want to go against the top of the competition so you can improve your play.
Yeah,
So then,
absolutely.
yeah. So then to go on to round 2, we're playing on Presence of Idols. I think I was playing against someone that's more casual. He took a Stormcast list with 4 Annihilators with Grand Hammers, 2 Dragons, and then he took Yandrasta and some of the heroes. So I don't think it was a totally optimized list, but he just wanted to charge and have fun, which I respect, because BOC charges. Y'all know me. Just roll 12. So I think his game-losing mistake, actually, was giving me first turn because I have the Corn Demon Prince. He gives me first. He puts all of his Grand Hammers in the sky. So I'm just like, okay.
Sure.
Well, so I position all my chaff up, my hammers behind them, and then the Demon Prince, he just pops his aura, and then I'm like, okay, that's my turn. And then he drops everything down, does some mortal wounds, fails to kill the Demon Prince with his dragon shooting, and then because of the Demon Prince, he couldn't charge me because he was outside of 9 or outside of 7 with 1 unit. So I'm just like, okay, that wasn't really much of a turn. And then I won priority, but I decided to give it to him because I'm just like, well, your guys move 4. I don't really have to do anything to you. And at the most, you're just going to kill 70 or 60 point units. And then I get to charge you. So that's what I did. He made some charges. He failed like half of his charges, sadly, even though he got within 3 inches because, well, the Demon Prince is the Corn Demon Prince. And that ability has solely won me games because he turns a 3-inch charge to a 6-inch charge, and that actually makes a difference.
Enjoy it while it lasts, Matt. Enjoy it while it lasts.
Oh, I'm abusing it until December.
Yeah.
Taking advantage of it. Yeah, I took a break from it, but then I'm just like, no, it's not working out, so I just wanted to go back to Demon Prince. Tom takes the same Demon Prince for his Corn list, which we'll go into later. So yeah, pretty much apt to, make this game 2 summary short. He kills all my chaff units at his top of 2, and then it's just like, okay, cool. He also killed the Demon Prince with Dragonfire. He just rolled 2 6s, and then he rolls 12 mortal wounds, and I'm just like, okay, well, my Demon Prince did my job. It's okay. And then my bottom of 2, I get my Fight Last Endless spell up. I charge everything with my hammers, and then more than half of his army, his dragons, and his annihilators get deleted. I take Prio, and I think I just roll through the rest of the game. But he was a really good guy. I liked him a lot. And then we talked after, and he was just telling me about his hobby. Wonderful painter too. I think he got in the paint competition actually. So yeah, that was a good time. And then to move on to my round 3, we were playing the I think it's the 4-up 5-up rally mission.
Yep.
Yeah. So then essentially
with the long board edge, you play from the short board edges the long way.
Yeah, so I think I would honestly like that mission more if everybody didn't get the 4-up 5-up rally, because it kind of gets ridiculous. Okay, I know it's hypocritic because I'm playing BOC. I'm just like, oh, I don't want everybody to have my rally. But yeah, I was playing against Flesh Eater Courts, and he took something different. So if I had to pull up his list today, his name is Ryan Brine, if that's his last name. He's some tough crowd, really cool guy, and I'm really glad I got to play him. So he was taking Blisterkin, Flesh Eater Courts, with an abhorrent Archregent with Durable Robe, which gives him +1 to cast, Crypt Haunter Courtier, 1 Crypt Horrors in Expert Conquerors, and then he just ran a bunch of Crypt Flayers, Crypt Ghouls, and he just wanted to swarm the board. Flesh Eater Courts versus BOC is actually a really interesting matchup because even I have my 4-up rally, but he also has a ability called Muster. Muster is essentially where he can pick 1 or 2 heroes, and he rolls like, I think from what I remember, 7 to 8 dice, and on 5-ups he brings like a whole unit back. And these guys are the big flayers or crypt horrors are 4 wounds each. So even if they're on a 5-up save, they also hit hard like BOC. So essentially we're both glass cannon hordes. So I have to really think about this matchup. I'm just like, okay, whoever charges who dies, but I think I out-summoned him. So I think my plan was throughout the game, I just kept summoning bodies and slowly pressured the top side. So I summoned Chaff, so then he was forced to have some of his Crypt Horrors and Crypt Flayers in reserve, while I slowly pushed the right side with my 3 Dragon Ogres, 10 Gores, and then I managed to summon some Bestigors. He had to literally pull almost 40% of his army to deal with that, because if I got a double, I would have just charged into his heroes and they would have killed them with Ren 3. And throughout the game, because I also had the Khorne Demon Prince, I also got to dictate combat, and I think Flesh Eater Courts absolutely hates the Khorne Demon Prince. So you're starting to see a theme with how I win my games. So yeah, so Khorne Demon Prince, and then I managed to get my spells off, and Hailstorm. So most of his guys are just, instead of moving 12, they're moving 6, or even 3. So while I'm slowing down most of his army, I'm able to take key combats that I want, and that are not on his terms. And by turn 5, I'm able to slowly grind down his army. And even though he was able to muster and rally, so there was one point in the game where he had 1 Crypt Flare left. He rolled a bunch of 5s and 6s on muster, and then he needed to bring four models back, and he controlled the objective. And he rolled 5 4s to bring back an entire unit from 1 to 9 Crypt Flares. So that's about like 40 or 50 wounds. And I was like, oh, so I guess that's how it feels to play against VOC. Okay, but at the end, that didn't seem to matter too much, because I was able to just take the objectives, grind out his back, keep summoning in the back just to make him deal with those. While at some point in turn 4, I was just able to just push the core of my army and the rest of my hammers just into his lines and just smash them with Fight Last and everything. So that was a really fun game. So I ended the day 1 2-1. So, pretty good record. I'm just like, okay, even though I can't get 5-0 at this point, but if I get enough points with differential, I can potentially get 4-1 and make it into top 8. So then to go on to my 4th round, it was a Beast Off. It was Beast of Chaos versus Beast of Chaos, and I was playing none other than Joe Cryer. So I guess, that's probably a name some of you guys here are familiar with. He took a totally different BOC list with he took Allherd, and Allherd is the summoning sub-faction. So if he spends a command point, he gets an extra summoning point. So he had 1 Dragon Ogre, 2 Dragon Ogre Shagoffs, 1 Zongor Shaman, 1 Great Brace Shaman, 6 Dragon Ogres, 10 Gores, 3 Zongor Skyfires, 20 Zongors on foot, which is just the foot Zongors, and 6 Zongor Light on Disc of Tzeentch. And he took really interesting endless spells. So he took Cogs, which is really good for BOC, but he took Lachon, the Soul Seeker, and Purple Sun of Shaiish. That seems really crazy to take as BOC, because we have no pluses to cast, even with rerolls. But it ended up actually working out for him, because this was Realmstone Cage, so this was kind of a charge at each other at the middle scenario, and then turn 3 the objective split in 2. So he gives me top of 1, of course. I pop my Khorne Demon Prince, I get everything up, so I'm just like, okay, I'm comfortable. You don't have a Khorne Demon Prince, I can dictate the combat, so not too much of a worry. So on his turn, he manages to get Lunchbox, as well as we call it, Lachon Lunchbox, same thing, the Soul Seeker off, and he manages to put his Shaggoth onto the Soul Seeker, brings it within 12 or 14 of my lines, and then he summons then he manages to get Purple Sun off. And then I'm just like, wait, what? So BOC with no pluses to cast. And he didn't even use a single... Cogs wasn't even up, because I unbounded Cogs. He just rolled an 11, and then he rolled a 12 for Purple Sun to come off. So now Purple Sun is up, and he kills my Demon Prince turn 1.
Nice.
He kills my Demon Prince, and he makes a bunch of things -1 to save. So I'm just like, oh, I'm in trouble. Because the only thing that manages to... because BOC versus BOC, in my opinion, it comes down to... Aside whoever plays better, it comes down to whoever rolls hot on the summoning and who's able to out-trade who, and definitely priority helps a lot in this matchup, because whoever hits who first just dies, because we have a billion rend. So he's able to pressure me, and then he clears off 10 GVs off of the point, just 10 Gores. I win priority turn 2. I opt to take it, because with no Demon Prince, he's allowed to play really aggressively into my hammers, and I don't want that. So he has 6 Dragon Ogres, which are about 30 wounds in a unit. and 20 Zongors, which is about 40 wounds. And then just sitting on the objective, and I'm just like, okay, I have to deal with this. So I send 6 Dragon Ogres in response. 6 Dragon Ogres and 6 Bulgors in response to his things, and I keep trying to unbind Sun throughout the entire game. Sun, for some reason, does not want to be unbound. So in my hindsight, I probably should have just said, fuck it, let Sun go through, because even if he doesn't roll a 1, the extra rend against me doesn't matter because we just have low saves. So I summoned Wildfire Taurus, which is a fight last on the spell, put it between his Zongors and Dragon Ogres, so they have to fight last. So I'm like, okay, I'm in a good spot. I managed to get BOC charges on both units. So like I think I was like outside of like 10 on Bulgors and outside of like 11 on Dragon Ogres, and I rolled 2 12-inch charges.
For those who don't know, Noog here is famous for rolling double-digit charges pretty consistently, but then the big trade-off is he rolls 1s for priority.
Yeah, which will actually matter later. Not to spoil, not to spoil too much, but yeah. So I roll my charges, and then Joe, because to give a little off topic, I was actually sharing a room with Joe Cryer and your round 3 opponent, Matt Barker, Mackenzie, who's playing Sylvaneth, and they were really cool guys. I really enjoyed being with them. So me and Joe, no matter who won between us, one of us was going to get the 4-1. So we were both like, okay, it's a rivalry, but it's going to be a fun game. He starts like jokingly shit talking. He's like, I've never seen Bulgors perform. They're not going to kill 30 wounds, and I'm just like, bet. So I managed to do a formation where I get 5 out of my 6 Bulgors into the unit. They had all the buffs on, +1 to hit, reroll wounds, extra rend, and they do about 30 damage before I do my horn attacks, which just clears off the unit of Dragon Ogres, and I just see his eyes widen, because he's just like, oh my god, I've never seen Bulgors do that. And I'm just like, yeah, they can do that. And then, because the fight lasts, 6 Dragon Ogres brought down the unit of 20 Zongors into 10 Zongors. And then, however, I underestimated Zongors because he opted with paired weapons. And then he had his hero nearby. He had +1 to hit, +1 to wound. So he actually did a number on my Dragon Ogres in the clapback. Out of 6 Dragon Ogres, he killed 4 of them. So I was like, okay, this is kind of concerning. So then I take back the objective, and then on his turn, bottom of 2, he sends his Zongor Enlightened and his heroes into the fight. He unbinds my Wildfire Taurus, which I really needed to keep my Bulgors alive. His 6 Zongor Enlightened, even without rerolls, proceeded just to do 24 wounds to my Bulgors, which is what you need to clear off 6 Bulgors. And then 2 Dragon Ogres, and also because he piled his guys out of combat in the previous turn. Wait, no, he didn't, because he fought into me, but he retreated them, and there were 10 Zongors left, and he rolled like 8 4 rallies. So they went from 10 to 18. So I was just like, oh fuck. And then he doubles me after killing the Bulgors. The 20 Zongors proceed to finish off my Dragon Ogres, and then his Enlightened charge into my Enlightened, and then his Purple Sun top of 3 kill 2 more of my heroes. So at this point, I'm just like, yeah, this is probably game. But because his Zongors were fighting before mine, his Zongor Enlightened on discs, they were not re-rolling. So he brought down 6 to 2 Zongor Enlightened left, and my 2 Zongor Enlightened, re-rolling everything, hits and wounds, they proceed to do 30 damage, taking his off back. So I was like, okay, this is like salvageable, and I still had Chaff, and I was actually out summoning him, even though he was going the summoning sub faction. So in my bottom of 3, I proceeded to roll 4 6s to bring back all my Zongor Enlightened, and then I was like, okay, this is it. If I get next turn Prio, he has nothing else. We barely have any bodies on the table besides like Chaff and summons and control objectives. If I get this, I win the game. He proceeds to roll a 2. So I'm like, all right, I just need to roll a 3 and above. And statistically, I'm able to get that. I roll a 1. My body betrays me. And then from that, he's able to get 20 Zongors and his heroes to charge my Zongor Enlightened and proceed to get more summons and just table me from there. I was not able to outplay the board. So I think we ended the differential was 14-6. So it was still a really close game. But I probably should have not positioned my Demon Prince up as close as I thought because I didn't think Lachon was going to go off and I did not think Purple Sun was going to go off. So yeah, really, he took a really interesting DOC list and it did work out for him. So yeah, good game, Joe Cryer. So then to go to round 5,
Matt, do you remember if any of his Enlightened or Dragon Ogres or any of his units were bounty hunters?
his all 3 of his guys were bounty hunters, but it really didn't matter against my hammers because my hammers were not GV. Yeah, so our lists were kind of identical, except endless spell choice is different. And he took 20 Zongors just to abuse the 4-up rally because they're 2 wounds each, so 20 of them is 40 wounds. And then over Bulgors, I chose damage, and he chose survivability. And BOC versus BOC, I think survivability edges out. But it was still a close game. I think our lists were evenly matched. He just had a little bit of a favorite. But yeah, good game, Joe. And then to go on to my round 5, I was playing against Tom Ling from Tough Crowd. Really funny guy. He was playing Nurgle, but he took a really different Nurgle list, which is really interesting. And we were playing on Silk Seal Nest, which is 8 objectives. It is honestly BOC's best mission, and I've only lost on it once to our local named Aaron, who won Old Town Throwdown because I forgot the charge. Oh well.
Your Silk Steel Nest is my Realmstone Cache.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah, pretty much. So to go over Tom Ling's list really quick, he took Drowned Men, and he went Blessed Desiccation for his grand strategy. I'm not sure what that does, or I don't remember, but...
You pick a terrain feature wholly within your opponent's territory. If you control it at the end of the game, you get it. That's what my grand strategy is. That's what pretty much all Nurgle grand strategies are, because it's just pretty easy to achieve.
Okay, yeah. So I assume it's because it's easy to pick. So then he went Blowab with Rancid Visitations for +1 to cast. Lord of Afflictions, overpowering extension, splits Hornhelm. Festus, the Leech Lord, for extra healing. 9 Untamed Beasts, 3 Plague Drones, 2 Pusgoyle Blight Lords, 10 Blight Kings, and 20 Plague Bearers. So essentially, in this mission, the way he deployed, because he knew it was his first time going against BOC. So I told him, everything I could do. So he stringed out his Plague Bearers, top left. He put them at the front of the line with 20 Plague Bearers, and then 10 Blight Kings all the way off onto the right flank, while his 3 Plague Drones were in the center, and his 2 Pusgoyle Blight Lords were in the top right corner. And because he opted to go for like low, I think he went like 3 or 4 drops, and I'm 11 drops, so I can just always counter deploy. So when he was deploying everything, he just like, I think he jokingly asked me, like, "Oh, how come you're not deploying your important stuff?" And I'm just like, "No, I'm just waiting to see where you go." So I put everything down and I counter deploy against him, and of course he gives me first. But with the way I play BOC and with how because I play heavily around drops, I really don't care about low drops. I actually want first most of the time because I want Demon Prince ability to go off. I want my endless spells to go off, so it provides me protection and just like all the crowd control and everything. So he gives me first, and then on one of my Dragon Ogre Shagoths, I have a relic that lets them run in charge wholly within 18 inches. So I put my 6 Dragon Ogres at the front first. They're 18 inches away from his Plague Bearers. I'm like, okay, bet. So I give them reroll wounds, summon lightning. I give them extra rend, just in case he pops all at defense. So they're gonna go from rend 1 to rend 2, and then they all Dragon Ogres have a hero phase move. I roll a 6, so I moved all my Dragon Ogres 6 inches in the hero phase. So I'm just like, okay, I get to move 8 inches, and I'm like within 12 of him. So all my buffs go off. I send my Dragon Ogres with my whole run and charge Shaggoth up to those Plague Bearers, and I give them +1. I give them +1 a hit, and then because the Shaggoth was wholly within 12 of those 6 Dragon Ogres, they also reroll hit rolls of 1. So now they're hitting on 2s, rerolling hit rolls of 1, wounding on 3s, 6 attacks each, rerolling all wounds, rend 2. So all defense is not gonna matter for those Plague Bears, and then 6 attacks. So I actually managed to get all 6 in with the flower petal formation. So that's about 36 attacks. I got about 70 damage in. Yeah, so it just went straight through his save, and he had to roll the 5 up ward, but it didn't matter. So I managed to clear off all those plague bearers, and then I control 2 of his objectives turn 1. So I was like, okay, now it's your move. So this sent him in a rush. But I think, and he was just like, he didn't know what to do because he never played against an army that's this fast, maybe outside of Iron Jaws. So, however, I actually got one of my in my turn, I actually got one of my spells off on the Puscoil Blight Lords to make them half move. So they went from a 4-inch move, 8-inch move to a 4-inch move, and then they just really couldn't go anywhere. And I kept that spell on them the entire game because it was just like, okay, if these guys don't do anything, then I don't care. And they were double half charged because they were always within 18 of my Demon Prince. So he had to spend an entire bottom of his turn just trying to get to one side of the army. His Festus spell did go off, but he wasn't really doing any damage to me. And he shot me with plague drones, but they didn't really do much. So he didn't kill anything his turn 1. So I was like, okay, we roll for Prio. I got Prio, but I give it to him because I'm just like, okay, you got to kill 30 wounds on a 3-up because I also had Mystic Shield on them. However, I underestimated Festus' spell, and safe to say, when his Blight Kings, his Plague Drones, and not the Festus spell, or which one is the one that just D3 mortal wounds addition?
Yeah, Blow-Ab Rot Spawned. Every phase that you take damage, you take an additional D3 mortal wounds.
Yeah, so I mean that's what was happening, and then he went against all odds just to take that objective back from me. But then, so he managed to do 40 damage, so that was shocking to me. I'm like, oh, Nurgle can actually do damage. I mean, I've heard about it, but I never experienced it. And then, yeah. However,
It's because we don't have any good Nurgle players in the local vicinity, man.
There it is! I knew it was coming!
I mean, Barker is top 2. Wait, let me open the door for my cat really quick. Give me like 2 seconds.
Love it. Love it. No, yeah, honestly, I think Miasma Pestilence might be one of the best spells in the game. I put Blow-Ab Rot Spawn in almost every list simply because it allows me to deal with Gargants. I mean,
yeah.
Well,
particularly since Nurgle, I mean, it's a spell that any phase you take damage, you get an additional D3. Well, Nurgle can do damage in literally every phase of the game. It's probably the only army that can do damage in every phase of the game.
And they used to be able to do damage in the movement phase when the beast retreated. That you could do a mortal wound. Now you get a disease point. So it was even better.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Matt. Continue.
But yeah, so I obviously underestimated the damage, but even though if I lost 6 Dragon Ogres, I still had most of my army up and the Demon Prince, so I really wasn't worried. And I've also played the Nurgle matchup plenty of times. The only one that's managed to beat me as Nurgle is Matt Barker. Although the last time we tried playing the matchup on TTS, I was actually given edibles, so I was offered another adventure, and we got to round 3, and I'm just like, dude, Prio? What is Prio? But okay, not.
If anybody who knows me, it's if you make the bet 9 times out of 10, it's me who's off in another adventure.
But yeah, anyways, to go on, so bottom of 2, I already had 3 Dragon Ogres that ran to his top left objective, so I already controlled that. And then I got my half move, half charge spell off on the Blight Kings again. And then I managed to shove up my Bulgors into his 2 Puscoil Blight Lords, kill them, bottom of 2, and then I summoned 10 Bestigors, and then they just charged his top. No, I had the top left point with 3 Dragon Ogres, and then I had the top right point. I charged it with 10 Bestigors, and then I took the point. So then I actually opted not to burn any of the points because I wanted to get hold 1, hold 2, hold more, and I wanted to make him split his army so he couldn't just like rush at me. He had to like make a choice. So he lost his plague drones were still around, but he lost his 20 plague bearers, and he lost 2 Puscoil Blight Lords. So his real only hammer right now is Orgots and the 10 Blight Kings. Turn 3, he wins Prio. He opts to take it, but sadly, he doesn't really do anything with it because I have so much crowd controls where I'm just move blocking him with my Wildfire Taurus. I'm having his move, I'm having his charge and everything, and he fails 5 3-inch charges because they got turned into 6 or 7-inch charges. Kind of sad. And then I think I slowly just grinded him throughout the game, and I think I just opted to ignore the 10 Blight Kings. I actually,
Smart
at some
move.
point, because this is literally our best map with 8 objectives. I just summoned around him, and I just forced him to like stay back and split his entire army open. And
You took
then
Nurgle's two main weaknesses and made them even worse, which is their slow movement and their lack of board presence.
yeah,
Smart move, Matt.
I attribute that to the Demon Prince again, the theme to my victories, and because my Hailstorm spell was going off. I actually before the round 4 and round 5, I put the Hailstorm spell onto the Blight King, so they're actually moving 2 inches now. So it's
Yep.
just like okay,
Yep.
whatever. So I won that game, but Tom Ling is a really cool guy. He's from Tough Crowd, really funny, and he was also one of the few Asians there. So I think I think Carl the Barl, as we know him from Season of War, Tom Guan came up to the table. We were all 4 Asians were talking, and then of course Noah Jiwan Singh. He grew up Asian, so he counts. So we're just like, you know what? If we ever make a team, we're gonna call it AOS, Asians of Sigmar. So yeah, so I think I ended the tournament 3-2, and I got the best of my bracket, so I'm the best 3-2, and I ended 30th out of like 150. So while I was hoping for 4-1 or better, I had a lot of fun at this tournament. There's so much more I could say about it, and I guess we will talk more about the tournament, the scoring
Definitely.
differentials after Tom speaks about his 5 games. Yeah.
Sure. So, yeah, I was pretty nervous at the beginning of this. Is my first tournament in a way. I don't actually play in many tournaments, and one of the reasons I don't play in many tournaments is because I get too nervous and I don't like it. But luckily, my first round was against somebody from Las Vegas now, who I've actually know pretty well. We play with the Vegas crew, a few times a year, so we know them all quite well. So that it was really nice to have that relaxing first round game where you know what you're up against. So my list, I'm playing Blades of Corn. It's the same list I've been playing forever. I'm too lazy to actually paint any new models or think about changing units out, so just keep to what I know. I have the Bloodthirster of Unfettered Fury. He's the one who gives me a 6-inch pile in a 16-inch radius from him with a command ability. Scarbrand just kills whatever he touches. A Boomthirster, who is the slot machine, just any 6s to wound, do when he's not damaged 4 mortal wounds to all enemy units within 8 inches, which 90% of the time he does nothing, but when he goes off, he goes off. A Slaughter Priest, whose basic job was just to stay at the back and just give me Blood Tithe with a prayer. And then the Corn Demon Prince, which Matt's been talking about. It's just essential in both Beasts of Chaos and Corn. Just such a control piece. Just both, if you have a melee army, you want to be able to control where the fights happen, and that Corn Demon Prince is just amazing. And then just 3 units of Fleshhounds as my battle line, and an Incarnate, where the Incarnate was bound to the Demon Prince. My thinking on that is that generally for me, by round 3, I don't care if the Demon Prince is alive or not, because all of the charging has happened. And my opponent is so angry with the Demon Prince by that time, I can just bait them into killing him. And as soon as he's dead, I'm like, great, you've just made the Incarnate even better now. So, or on the flip side, in the first 2 turns, they're wary about killing the Demon Prince because they don't want to make the Incarnate better. So either way, I am in a better position. So that's my list. Again, the only change I've made in the last year really has been adding the Incarnate and taking out Bloodthirster. So
Even from 2.0, this list isn't very different. And
yeah,
I will say to people that don't play in SoCal, I like to call it everyone who plays in SoCal, especially their first time in AOS, they go through something I call the baptism of fire, where they get tabled by Tom's Bloodthirsters because for some reason when he's teaching someone, he's playing with someone new to Sigmar, he always rolls 3s or 4 6s, and then he just ends up doing 12 or 16 mortal wounds within 8 inches and just tables the army. And then that happened to me when I came over to his house, and I'm just like, you know what? I want to play more Sigmar. how do I beat this? And then, yeah, it's
I
fun.
don't think people understand the power of a smart player with 6-inch pylons until they play Tom, and they're like, "Oh, that's how you use that. I
Yeah.
see."
So anyway, I was playing now. He plays a lot in Vegas. There's another player in Vegas who plays a very similar list to mine, so he had a lot of experience against playing against my list. The player isn't as good as I am, Corey, but he plays the same list.
Very, very modest. Okay.
Always. Uh, Now it was playing Zinch, but it was a really interesting Zinch list. It was basically all Screamers, Zangoid Light, and Skyfires. So I think he had one cast, which is crazy for a Zinch list, but very melee oriented. Can do a lot of damage if it gets into you. But I think because he was a lot of experience of getting smashed by Bloodthirsters, he played quite defensively. And that allowed me, and again, we're playing close to the chest, which has got quite a few objectives on the board. That allowed me to just put my screens in, put up the demon prints, and he was just not able to do any damage to me because the one time he actually committed and sent everything into me, he needed to kill a unit to get an objective and to get a battle tactic. I got a 6-inch redeploy, and when you've got the Corn Demon Prince also 6-inch redeploy. It's
You
just,
just, yeah.
yeah, enjoy making that 18-inch charge on 2 dice with 5 of your units. So it was a pretty tough game for him. And once he had overcommitted, then Scarbrand and Boomthirster went in and just destroyed everything. I love playing against the Vegas crew, and now he's a great guy. So it was a fun game, but yeah, it was just a tough matchup for him. Game 2, I was playing against a guy called Brandon Phillips. I think he's from the East Coast. I didn't really know much about him before. He was playing Ideneth, Bryondar, or whatever the list is. I don't know much about Ideneth at all. I think I've only played one game against them maybe in the last couple of years. But he had lots and lots of Reavers. There's the shooting elves. Yeah, and Khorne does not like playing against shooting armies, so I was very wary about that. He has the king who can hit like a truck. 2 units of sharks, again, a shooting unit that can actually hit in combat as well, and an aspect of the sea. And we were playing on idols. He also had the hero that lets you deep strike, so he deep struck all of his shooting, which again is just really bad for Khorne because they just pop up 9 inches away from you. And I think they've got an 18-inch range.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that means they're going to be able, if you're not really careful with your deployment and your screening, they can just pop up and kill a Bloodthirster or 2 Bloodthirsters straight away. I think he was a 40k player. He was a very good player and very, very good at distance and movement. I think he plays against the Khorne player locally, so he understood my army very well. He was really good at measuring distances. He knew that the threat range of a Bloodthirster is 22 inches. So, okay, this is 22.5 inches away. This is 22.5 inches away, which is when you're playing against somebody new, when they're that detailed, it's fantastic. Just to understand that both of you understand what's going on and where everything is. But again, I understood that he had an 18-inch range on a deep strike, so I just put all of my big units right in the corner, let the incarnate go at the front and put my dogs up at the front. And he measured it out and understood that, yes, if he deep struck 9 inches away from my dogs, he wasn't going to be able to shoot any of my Bloodthirsters. So then, because of that, he gave me first turn. I think he was expecting me to charge at the units he did have on the board, but I didn't. I just stayed in my little corner and just moved my dogs even further up. So now, if he did deep strike, he had literally nothing that he could shoot other than dogs. I threw my incarnate forward because you can shoot my incarnate. Great, go for it. And then I think that threw him a little bit, and he was just a little bit cagey. He made a misplay where he charged the sharks into the incarnate to try and reduce its level, which he did do. He did reduce its level, but by making that charge and then the incarnate just killed the 2 sharks, he lost an objective and he lost a battle tactic, which was a 4-point swing. in maybe round 2, which was really tough for him to come back from. But the pivotal moment in the game was in the bottom of 3. I had enough blood tithe by then to hero phase move my Boomthirster. So I moved him up. I charged into the aspect of the sea, or I used a 6-inch pylon, sorry, to get into the aspect of the sea. The Boomthirster, being the Boomthirster, did nothing against the aspect of the sea, just completely fluffed. But I was able to pile into him, and then I won priority. And during priority, so this was round 4 now, I suppose. So he wasn't fighting first. The Boomthirster was swinging into the aspect of the sea. I was able to pile in the 6 inches, hoping to be able to get within boom range of all of his other, like the King and the Reaver units. But it was maybe like 7 inches, 9 inches away. So I wasn't quite able to get him into range of those units. Luckily, the Boomthirster, being a Boomthirster, completely fluffed and did 0 damage against the aspect. And I had put fight twice on him, so then I was able to 6-inch pile in again, and that got me that one extra 1 inch that I needed. And then I think I rolled 4 6s to wound, so did a huge boom, killed the aspect, killed the King, killed Reavers,
Oh,
and that was pretty much it. That was the
you
game.
love to see it. You love to see it.
Just
Yep, it's bringing
that,
back PTSD memories.
it's just the Boomthirster being the Boomthirster. If he had gone off in the bottom of the 3rd, then I probably would have lost the game. But he didn't. He fluffed. And if he'd gone off on the first activation in the top of the 4th, I probably would have lost the game. But he fluffed and he did nothing. By fluffing those 2 times, it gave me the movement I needed to be able to get in range of everything. And that's when he exploded, and it just
All planned, of course. All
Oh
planned.
yeah, all according to plan. Yeah.
I came over and I was watching the end of this game, and there was a moment at the bottom of turn where you had basically already secured the victory, and you're trying to maximize points because of march into victory. And we had to look up whether you can or must re-roll ones to hit because you were really trying not to kill things on his turn so that you could secure a battle tactic on your turn. And that was such a funny moment that
man.
you're like, I really hope he whiffs because you don't want him to die on your opponent's turn because would have nothing left to kill for a battle tactic. It was
Right.
great. It was a great
Right.
moment.
So then I'm 2 games in, 2 wins. Then game 3, I had to pair against Caleb Walters, who is a
Oh
top
man.
Zinch player and actually went on and won the whole tournament. So it was tough.
Top player in general, just a top
Yeah,
player. Yeah.
and a good guy as well. I
Yeah.
thoroughly enjoyed the game
Absolutely.
against him. Another really precise guy. Exactly what's going on. He's
Mhm.
got his own Etsy business making tokens, so all the tokens are on the board. You know what everything's doing. So he was playing Zinch. He had Kairos, Lord of Change, Acolytes, 2 units of Acolytes, and some Zangors. Then the Zinch Wizard that can cast like 6 spells.
If he rolls a 9 to cast, he can keep casting.
Yes. And then Purple Sun, a Spell Portal, Ravanax, and an Incarnate. And his tactic, we're playing Won't Back Down, so yeah, going a long way. His tactic was basically keep the Lord of Change, Kairos, and the little spellcaster right
That
at the
seems
back.
really brutal with 4 up, 4, 5 up rally on horrors. That actually
Yeah,
sounds.
yeah. And he was able, Zinch, his thing was every time a spell is cast, he gets a summoning point, and he needs 10 summoning points to summon a unit of blue horrors. Well, between his casters, he's able to cast, I think, 14 spells a turn. So he was able basically to summon, and the little guy who, yeah, if he rolls a 9 or higher, he's able to keep casting. He was on like +3 to cast or something, so
Yeah.
it was just going off nonstop. So he was summoning 10 blue horrors a turn. And an incarnate is just my worst nightmare. Just an incarnate will easily kill a bloodthirster return. And of course, because it's a bloodthirster, a monster, it's leveling up as well. So it was an extremely tough matchup. But I was actually ahead on points the whole game. Because he was playing defensively, I was able to get the objectives and I was able to get battle tactics. And so by round 5, I was ahead on points. And then I didn't have any army left, but I was ahead on points. I think all I had left was my priest and 1 unit of dogs. And I won priority. I realized that, I think I counted that I just needed to score 1 point. And I were like, if I took the bottom of 5, I just needed to score 1 point and get my grand strategy, and I would win the game. And the only way that he could prevent me from doing that was to table me. And I worked out that it was unlikely that he tables me because of ranges and stuff. But long story short, he rolled an 18 on Ravanax on 3 dice, and
Jesus.
Oh,
my unit of dogs with
And he needs to roll what to win the game?
I think he needed a 16. I had 4 dogs left, and then movement 8. So,
what the hell, man?
Oh my god.
but
Wow.
I mean that dice happens. The really, really, really sad thing is I was extremely tired, jet lagged. Again, we started at 8 a.m., which is 5
Yeah.
a.m. My brain was all over the place. And of course, I had maybe 11 blood tithe, and Corn can use blood tithe to just say that a spell doesn't go off. So yes, he rolled at 18, but I had enough blood tithe to just, well, I could have moved my dogs. So a hero phase move, I could have moved them out of range of all of his spells. That would have won me the game. I could have just used blood tithe to stop his spell from going off. That would have won me the game. But I just didn't think to do anything, and I literally did nothing. I just stood there and took all of the damage and lost the game.
What could
Man,
have been, huh?
Yeah,
well, it's so funny because I tell my friends, like I was staying with a buddy who's a non-hobby guy, and yeah, I go back and I'm just like, I am just mentally drained, emotionally drained, and he's like, well, he doesn't get it. You're just rolling dice and you're playing a board
yeah.
game, but it's so much more than that.
I'd also, in that game in particular, I felt that my lack of experience of playing with the new battle tactics really hurt me. There were twice in the first 2 rounds, I took battle tactics that I really should not have taken. My general Bloodthirster was in combat with 3 Brimstone Horrors, and I didn't take this one's mine. You know,
Oh.
what am I
Yeah,
thinking? Right. And then round 4 and 5, I just didn't have battle tactics I could score anymore. If I
yeah,
had left the easy ones until the end, it would have been a different game as well.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
he rolled an 18 on Ravanax, but I lost the game. It was my
yeah.
inexperience and my just not thinking that lost me that game.
So I guess like to talk a little bit about Caleb. I guess the funny thing about him is that like I never seen pictures of him and I had no idea what to expect. I always joke with a local named Shane who was gunning for top Zinch. I don't think sadly he may be getting that anymore with Caleb. So I had no idea what Caleb looks. So I guess I assumed he would look like a typical Zinch player. Nope, this guy literally looks like the Mountain from Game of Thrones. He's like 6'7", he's massive and he's huge, and I'm just like, huh. Figured he looks like a Giants or Destruction player. Nope. Not only is he has big muscles, big height, everything. He's got a big brain. Damn,
I
this
have
guy
played
has it
against
all.
Caleb is a he lives in Maryland. He's a local to the DC area scene. I've played against him a couple of times in tournaments and just pickup games. He is a very, very cerebral player. He's great at positioning and movement, and he's a very tough opponent to draw at the end of a long day when you're jet lagged and everything. So hats off for playing him so close, Tom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I say I lost by 1 point. Gavin, the top
Solid.
player in the world, lost by 1 point, and he's playing an OP list. So I'll take that.
What are you trying to say? Sounds like if you beat Caleb, maybe you'd have been the champion of Nova.
No, I don't think so. You can never say that, right? Because my 4th game and my 5th game would have
Yeah,
been different had I won against
exactly,
Caleb.
exactly.
Yeah.
So who's
So
your round
then
4, Tom?
game 4 was against Sean Allen, who is sort of on the fringes of the Team America group. I interacted with him a little bit online. He was playing Stormcast. shoot cast, 2 units of long strikes, 10 protectors, fulminators, birds, liberators, the Celestin and Lictor, I think.
We were table neighbors for this game.
Yes. This list is just an absolute nightmare for me. 2 units of long strikes can just destroy a bloodthirster a turn without
Easy.
thinking. Fulminators just
Even 3 can kill a bloodthirster, because I know it was not like a big 6-pack. It was 3
2
long
units of
strikes.
3.
Yeah, I'm surprised that 3 long strikes can kill a bloodthirster.
Well, but if you've got 2 units, it's 6.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If all 6 models shoot a bloodthirster, they will kill.
Okay, true. I thought you meant 1 unit of
No.
3 kill.
The
Okay.
And then of
2
course
units-
they can fire twice one turn. So
Yes, right. So there were. I was somewhat lucky. Well, I was very lucky with the mission. It was Realmstone Cache. So for the first 2 turns, there's just a single objective, and then after that, there's just 2 objectives. I was also somewhat lucky that the terrain on the table was we can talk about terrain later, but this table did actually have some line of sight blocking terrain, so I was able to hide my bloodthirsters behind it a little
Right.
bit. But he played, as you would expect a list like that to play. The long strikes were up in the sky, but they just came down, and he just completely castled and just shot at me and killed a bloodthirster a turn. It was absolutely brutal. I was, because of the line of sight blocking, I was able to get Scarbrand with a double activation, double 6-inch piling into his protectors and fulminators. I had choice. I didn't really know much about fulminators. I do now. They are a nasty unit.
Yeah.
1 activation of Scarbrand killed 2, and then they just chopped him to pieces. It was just not fun. I managed to get my incarnate onto the single objective. The protectors just came in, and the incarnate just cannot kill a single protector. Just no chance.
Yeah, because they would have like +1 to save, another +1 to save, and then they would
Yeah, they
probably
were
have
on
another +1 to save.
probably a 0+ save
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Just horrible. So by the I think by the bottom of 3, all I had left was the Demon Prince and a priest and a unit of dogs. And that was it. But because there was only a single objective, and I'd got battle tactics, we were tied on points, and he just wasn't able to get more objectives than me because there just aren't any objectives on the table. And then it came down to I basically kept my army out of range of him on turn 4, I think. So again, by the end of 4, we are now tied on points. Going into 5, I actually said to him, we had got on really well. We were having a great game. I said, actually, this would be really nice if it was just a tie. I am happy with the tie. And he said, yeah, he's happy with it too. I think I took top of 5. Neither of us could score a battle tactic in the 5th round at all. We both had, by this point, the objectives are split, obviously, so there's now 2 objectives, 1 in each of our sides. He was castled on his. I was castled in inverted commas on mine with my Demon Prince and a Slaughter Priest. But they were kind of out of range of his shooting. So he couldn't get a battle tactic. I couldn't get a battle tactic. Would get 1 point each for objectives. So then it was just a case of grand strategies. His grand strategy was have more units in my deployment zone than he did. He had nothing near my deployment zone. My grand strategy was have a GV unit or model in every quarter, type of quarter. I didn't have any dogs left by this time, but I had lots of points, so I could summon. But he had 8 protectors on the middle of the board. I got absolutely 0 chance of being able to summon a dog on there. But then he got a bit ballsy, and he decided to go for the win. So he teleported the protectors off the center of the board into my deployment zone, which meant that he had 1 unit in my deployment zone. I only had the Slaughter Priest. So I think he was thinking, if he can make that charge, kill the Slaughter Priest, then he would have 1 unit and I wouldn't have any. I still have my Demon Prince alive, but if he managed, because 8 protectors has a big footprint, and the deployment zone in Realmstone Cache is actually pretty small. He would
Yes.
be able to block my demon prince from being able to get into my territory unless I charged him, in which case they could kill him anyway. So it was a pretty ballsy move, but he just didn't make the charge.
Hmm.
And of course, then the center of the board is open. He did leave, I think it's the Castellan, one of the heroes. They all look the same, Stormcast. Close enough to the center of the board that I wasn't able to summon directly onto it, but I was able to summon and then make a charge into the hero. So I did that, gambling that hero wouldn't be able to kill all 5 dogs that I summoned. But then he said the words that I had completely forgotten about. Again, just me not playing enough games. Unleash Hell. And long strikes, Unleash Hell can be pretty nasty. And he killed, I think, 4 dogs with that Unleash Hell. But then I'm just like, oh, okay. Well, then I don't need to make the charge. I'll just pull off those dogs at the front and I'll leave 1 dog left in the center of the table, which got me my grand strategy. I didn't even think about it until he had killed the dogs. When he killed 4 dogs, I'm like, oh great, all that Castellan has to do now is kill 1 dog in combat, and I don't get it. But then I realized, actually, I'll just pull off the dogs at the front and leave 1 dog alive on the center
And
of
you're
the
not in
table,
combat anymore.
who's not in combat anymore.
Yep.
And that's the end of the game, and so I won.
That's really close.
Wild.
Damn.
Yeah, it
Wild.
was really close. It would have been a tie had he not gone for the win.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Sometimes you gotta risk it for the biscuit. I
yeah,
respect
props to
that.
him for trying it. So then it's 3-1, and then
Okay.
the last game was against Jake de Batista, who was a fantastic player. Versus Legion of the First Prince, Be'lakor, a Boomthirster, Sloppity Bellpiper, the
Like
Mirror,
Bears.
Blue Scribes, and then Plague Bearers. Silk Steel Nests. To be fair, the game was pretty uneventful. He played much better than I did, but it just wasn't a fair matchup for him. I was able to kill the Mirror and Scribes I think maybe bottom of 1 or top of 2, so really early on with the Boomthirster, and then my Incarnate just went straight up the middle, ate his Boomthirster, and just tore apart Plague Bearers. And he did eat Scarbrand with his son, but my Boomthirster was able to kill Plague Bearers. And so by, I think, the bottom of 3, all he had left was Be'lakor, some really annoying Furies who I'd never played against, and damn, they're annoying. But yeah, with that many objectives on the board, he just didn't have the units to be able to capture them and outscore me. So it was a fun game, and he played really nicely. Just it was a bad matchup, I think. I completely forgot to burn objectives again, having never played Silk Steel Nests before. So I could have got more points or made it over earlier, but he played right until the end.
We all 3 played that objective differently. Tom forgets to burn objectives. I got burn happy, and anytime I could burn, I did, and it almost cost me the game because he ended up getting into my territory and started capturing my own, and I had already burned all his, and so that was dangerous. And then Matt played the smartest, I think, and
Yep.
kept them and didn't burn them, so it was interesting.
Yeah, I mean it's my best mission, so I had to like learn every intricacy. And I think when I first started playing that mission, I always just burned it right away. But then I learned the value of if I don't burn, then they have to choose.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah.
So
So
Tom, you ended up 4-1.
I ended up 4-1. Like middle of the pack of the 4-1s, I think. I finished in 15th place, I think.
Yeah, you were a couple places ahead of me. I ended up in 18th place.
Yeah, and then I think I was 2 points away from the getting into the top 8.
Oh, so you were that close? Okay.
Yeah, just a couple more, couple of games played slightly differently, and maybe I would have got
Mm.
there. But
I feel like that's a really good segue into talking about differential because I think there was a lot of opinions about differential that weekend. Having talked to a lot of the Team America members and people that like even that were playing the game casually, they seem to feel different about differentials. So yeah, well, maybe let's segue into that.
oh, so the scoring system used at Nova, which is a common style of scoring, although not exactly the same. I think they came up with the particular differential scoring system they had was they came up with it just for Nova. But the idea being that you can score between 0 and 20 points each round, and the number of points that you score is based upon how much you beat your opponent by in the game, or how much you lost in the game by. And it does mean, particularly if at Nova there were 140 players, I think. So the top 8 wasn't going to be just everyone who went 5-0. There were going to be some 4-1s in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you lost one of your first few games and you didn't have a really blowout win, you kind of already knew that you were out of the running for that top 8 position. Yeah, Barker was one of them. And yeah, there were some, top 5 players in the world at that event who, because of the pairings and got paired against each other, and or were paired against players who just didn't allow them to score really highly and blow them out. It just meant that they weren't able to go for the final places really early on. And that's quite disheartening as a player to know that after your second game, you're out of the running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say that James O'Brien was the TO. He did an absolutely impeccable job as a tournament organizer and as a judge. I have a pretty low bar for tournament organizers in my area. So it's not going to take much for James to overcome that, but no, he did a great job. His pack was clean, and there are a few rules questions that got answered really quickly. However, I'm not a fan of margin of victory scoring. The system that Tom was just mentioning for two main reasons. One of them is in general. One of them is a little biased. The first one is that it encourages players to grab a victory and then hold your opponent down, no matter if it's the first game and it's their first tournament, and you have to try to beat them as hard as possible and never let your foot off the gas, because the more you beat them, the more points you get, the better placing you get. So for instance, in my first game against Walter, and I don't know if it was his first tournament or he was just new to tournaments. I was in cruise control for the whole game. It was a great game, but I'm just going to be honest. I felt comfortably that I was going to win the game from about turn 2, and it got to about turn 4, and there's a uh, he was going to miss his battle tactic, which was an OBR battle tactic. He had to kill a hero, and if he did it with the harvester, he got an extra point. And he swung with his club fist attacks, which are 2-inch range. He didn't kill Gut Rot Spume. And so he was like, well, I'm not in range to attack with my 1-inch attacks. I was like, man, go ahead. Swing with your 1-inch attacks. You're like a 1/4 inch out. Like, just go ahead and swing. Kill him. Smash him. For the vibes. And that actually, he ended up killing Gut Rot, getting his 3-point battle tactic, which ended up dropping me a differential level, which cost me 1 or 2 tournament spots. Not that it would have put me in the top 8, but it just I was incentivized to not be a courteous, or not courteous. I was incentivized to not be a fun player. I should have not given him, that sort of memory that he might take away from that game. So it just encourages you to club the baby seals even harder,
Yeah.
especially in the early rounds. And then the second reason, which is a little bit biased, is my army and a lot of other armies are not built to blow out opponents. Nurgle, there are some builds that can. My army is not one of them. And so all my wins, other than that first win, which was a 17 point out of 20 point win, all my wins were like 14 points. I was winning my games 14-6. And so there just are some armies that are designed to punch you in the teeth and then keep going, and there are some that are designed to control and own the flow of the game. Now, granted, Caleb Walters' army typically is one of those control builds, and he ended up winning the tournament. So good players will overcome it. But I just
If you go 5-0, it doesn't matter. It
right,
really
exactly, yeah,
doesn't matter.
right,
It's if you lose a single game, then you're in a tough spot. And yeah, I mean, there were a couple of kids playing at the tournament, I think, if I remember correctly, if you're paired against some 12-year-old kid who's playing Warhammer for the first time, yeah, your incentive is to absolutely smash him. And
Yeah, but you don't want to ruin their experience, especially because
right,
Right.
yeah, you don't.
but
Yeah.
if you don't ruin their
And
experience,
then you won't get into top 8. Yeah, so
yeah,
it's kind of
right.
Yeah,
So those are my two reasons for not really being totally into margin of victory. Although it's a very common tournament scoring system on the East Coast, especially in the Mid Atlantic.
why
Yeah.
is it a really common like East Coast or Midwest scoring system? Why?
I played a lot of RTTs at a fantastic shop in Fredericksburg, Virginia called Battlegrounds, and Warp Charge Gaming does the stream there. George Rollins from Warp Charge Gaming does the stream. I saw George and I recognized him immediately, and we had a great conversation. So, and they just do margin of victory, and that's just how it is. James runs margin of victory tournaments. He runs Grudge Hammer at Huzzah Hobbies in Leesburg, Virginia, another fantastic shop, and it's just really common. So I knew what I was getting into. I just don't like it. So I mean, like I said, James did a fantastic job TOing.
Oh,
Yeah,
without that, I
Yeah,
mean, I don't
and
have
and
enough good things to
and
say
the
about James.
stream, which was run by Season of War, and the shoutcasting, which was done by fellow Corsair John Fierhelm and Emma Mengels from Team America, and Dayton from Party at the All Points. They had sort of a rotating cast. Fantastic shoutcasting, fantastic quality stream. Yeah, so I'm just not a big fan of Margin of
yeah.
Victory.
Yeah, I guess also my other issue with margin of victory is that it just relies way too much on luck and pairings because Age of Sigmar, like part of the balancing is rock, paper, scissors, and Seraphon. Okay, well that that was a joke, but yeah, I mean sometimes if you literally have to get the perfect pairings or near perfect, because even if you get even if you get paired into like let's say someone that may not be as like good as you, but if it's your counter pick, like your army counter pick, you can outplay it, but you'll just score lower naturally. Then you're just out of the running. Like
Yeah.
there's no like I remember I was talking to Anthony Trentinelli about it, and he was just like, "Yeah, I was just like outplaying most of my opponents, but like because he was playing a slower army or just like an army that doesn't table from bottom of 1 to turn 2, you can't guarantee that you can't guarantee a 20-0 or a 19-1 or 18-2.
Well, you look at, Owen Jackson, I think generally thought of as being one of the best players in the world.
Yep.
Just the random number generator paired him against Gavin round 1.
Yeah.
Another one of the greatest players in the world. Like,
Yeah,
you
and
know what I
like
mean?
and Owen Jackson probably would have made top 8 under any different other scoring
Yes.
system, but because
Really,
he got Gavin, that just kind
unfortunately,
of
he
like
ended up the second best Welshman at the show.
And another big factor that goes into whether you can crush your opponent or eke out a win is something that has some influence. In this tournament, it didn't really have the big influence, is terrain. And I know on the West Coast, in Southern California, I should say more specifically, Tom, your packs have terrain rules very explicitly laid out in your pack. There are 2 wildwoods, there are 2 defensible pieces of terrain, there are 2 impassable pieces of terrain, and it's not a question whether mystical terrain rules are being used. On the East Coast, by comparison, which was a welcome addition to when I moved from East to West Coast, was that a lot of times players are like, "Oh, you want to use mystical terrain? Oh, okay, I guess so." But in the Old Town Throwdown pack, which is a free resource for any TO worldwide to use, oldtownthrowdown.com. It's not an option. It's just in the rules. You have to use mystical terrain. There are 2 impassable pieces. There are 2, and impassable terrain can have and defensible, which you can't land on top of, even a flying unit, can have quite a dramatic impact on the flow of the game and have quite a dramatic repercussions for when you're trying to win a game. And
It's also that because we are used to packs where there are 2 defensible, 2 wildwoods, 2 impassable, we make sure that every table has those terrain features on the table. Whereas at Nova, it was
it was random.
noticeable But some tables just had no line of sight blocking. Nothing was more than an inch tall. No buildings, no impassable, nothing. And
Ponds
then
and
other one,
walls.
yeah, and so there was a random selection of terrain on some of the tables, which was, again, you're just rolling a dice. Do you get a table that suits your army, or do you get a table that doesn't suit your army? Whereas
In
we're
the
a bit
in the
more
final.
standardized.
Go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
No, that was the end of my sentence.
I'm sorry about that. In the final game, again with Caleb and Scooter, they had two large buildings right in the middle of the map on head-on collision. So they had the 3 objectives diagonal and 2 buildings on either side of the middle terrain feature, which I think had a dramatic influence on how Scooter was not able to just get in
Oh,
Caleb's face and played right into Caleb's strategy, which is slow down the game, control, ranged mortal wounds, summon multiple layers of screens, and force you to play his game. And I think that, again, had they played in a game with 2 pawns in the middle or no line of sight blocking terrain, it would have been a maybe a different outcome. So
yep.
Yeah, so I think in my games, every time, like, this didn't happen in all my games, but in at least probably 3 of my games, when I asked to play with, hey, can we play with can we play with impassable, or like impassable wildwoods, and what's the other big one? Garrisons, and using terrain dice to represent terrain rules. My opponents didn't seem too comfortable with that, or they're like, oh, well, in the East Coast, we usually don't play with any of those. So then I felt pressured as a player where I'm just like, okay, I don't want to be a dick, and I'm already out of the running from top 8. So I guess I'll just, like, go along with, like, not playing with any of, what I'm very, like, what we're comfortable with on the West Coast. And because of that, I feel like I was playing a totally different game of Sigmar, even though, yes, we were playing Age of Sigmar, but the fact that terrain, like, either didn't matter as much, or we didn't have, like, terrain rules. And also, sometimes when I played against players, whoever won Defender not only got to set terrain and, like, maybe set terrain dice if they wanted it to be, they also got to pick sides. So the attacker really doesn't get anything besides just dropping first. So I'm just like, okay, so I hope I win this roll off. Otherwise,
Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know.
Because the terrain setup for those who weren't at Nova was there was a set terrain organizational system, which I know Garrett Mulroney, who's also he organizes some events with James, is specifically Grudgehammer in May at Leesburg. They had a 3-2-3 system where there were 3 pieces of terrain on the long edge, 2 in the middle, and 3 on the opposing long edge, and the defender got to put what pieces where, but it was a set pattern of terrain. And so, like Tom said, it was really just a slot machine of, do I have tall walls? Do I have, tall buildings? Do I have ponds and some scatter terrain or cover? And yeah, so
It's not even
mysterious
that,
terrain. Yeah.
but it's also that, you know, when the pack says you have to have 2 wildwoods, even if the table doesn't have things that actually have trees on them, you can just say, yeah, this pond is now a wildwood. But if the pack doesn't say that, then I'm at a table which doesn't have any physical trees on the table, you felt very uncomfortable saying this feature here now has the wildwood rule, because they just look at you
Yes.
like, what are you talking about? There's no trees on that thing. Why is it got wildwoods?
Right.
You know,
Right.
and my little corn demon prince, he likes to hide in the woods.
Yeah, and I feel
Well,
like as a result of that, I just feel like it just makes our metas different. Like, because most of the West Coast, including Pacific Northwest now, and, like, Arizona and other places, they've actually started to use Tom's Pack. The way we play Sigmar, because we have to play with this, is a different meta versus, like, East Coast, where I know each state has its own rulings, but pretty much from what I understand is that terrain doesn't matter as much. Maybe someone from the East Coast can correct me about that, but I I feel like I had to learn a new game during the tournament, and I think that definitely, like, messed with me a little bit.
Well, I played most of my Warhammer Age of Sigmar on the East Coast, so absolutely, it's wildly different. It took me a while to adjust to, the
Yeah.
rules that Tom set up, and Aaron Albert, the TO for Boise Cup, which is growing by the year, and this year there were 60 people at Boise Cup. Again, he used Tom's pack, and there was 2 defensible, 2 wildwood, and I felt I had to explain everything to some of my players because they're like, I don't understand, but this doesn't have any trees. How can it be a wildwood? Well, it has the wildwood rules and so on and so forth. So yeah, terrain traditionally, and like I said, just mentioned Garrett. He invested quite a bit of money on a uniform terrain setup. So when they actually do get to run Grudge Hammer again, because COVID has shut it down for the past couple of years, every table will not only have the same terrain layout, they will have the same piece of terrain in the same position at every table. Everybody will be playing on the same terrain setup across the whole tournament, which I think is really interesting. And this isn't little tiny ponds and scatter terrain. These are big pieces of terrain that will impact the game. So I'm glad to see that transition. I hope it happens a little faster because terrain makes the game fun. Terrain makes the game interesting. It makes you think more. A lot of times when people were complaining about the power of Caradron Overlords when their book first dropped, oh my God, you can be anywhere. Yeah, except outside of 1 inch of all the terrain that's on the board. And if you play with no terrain or you play with tiny pieces of terrain, yeah, they can go anywhere. But if you play with 6, 7, 8 pieces of terrain like you're supposed to, it really limits where they're able to go. So
Or it's
again,
even that, the over the last couple of years, the shooting meta was really strong, and people were complaining about the shooting meta
mhm.
outside of Lumineth, who don't care about line of sight. Yes, if you have zero terrain on the table, then shooting can be a real problem. But if you have walls that you can put your models behind, then you don't need to worry about it as much.
Look at 40K tournaments where a lot of their terrain are just L-shaped walls, and it's that way for a reason. Because if there were no terrain on the board, it would just be a shooting gallery. You'd be,
Yeah.
that game at a boardwalk or a carnival where you just pick up the little laser gun and you shoot at different targets, and that's what it would be. That's what that game would be. So
I think we
Okay.
also do player place terrain. I think that's what we call it, where it's like whoever wins defender gets to set the terrain and they set the terrain rules, but then attacker gets to pick sides. So there's a lot of like nuance on when we play on the West Coast, who wants defender and who wants attacker. So yeah.
of course, the each mission will have a specified terrain map where you're forced to put terrain in specific locations, but the defender gets to choose what goes where. Do you want the large line of sight blocking in the middle, or do you want kind of an open middle ground? That choice is up to you to make. That's a strategic decision to make for you, but you have to put terrain on the board, and there usually is a really good selection of terrain at Tom's tournaments, and just West Coast events in general, because there's other TOs that run events in the area using his pack. So, yeah, and you're a smart guy and you don't use margin of victory. So,
Yeah, we
All right.
call it the correct pack.
So, I mean, but the overall overwhelming feeling was, apart from some slight terrain things and margin of victory, it was a fantastic event. I
Oh
was
yeah,
definitely
it was fun as hell.
yeah.
Yeah.
the stream was high quality. Judges were doing active judging, which I really appreciate. Instead of all 6 of them kind of dicking around at the judges table, they were walking around and they were answering questions. And you could, hey, there's a judge right at the end of my row. I can just grab them instead of having to shout for a judge. They were walking around answering questions, pointing things out, helping newer players, always calling time, helping with scoring. It really was not just a passive sort of way that they were just running the event. They didn't start it and then just hands off. They were an active participant in the game, keeping the
Yeah.
flow, and it was great.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely love Sigmar, and that's what I really appreciated. I mean, yeah, despite our issues with like the pack and differential scoring, yeah, it was a fantastic event, and I actually got to meet a lot of the East Coast Age of Sigmar people for the first time. I've been talking to like a lot of them online for the past 3 years over on either AOS Coach Discord or some other Discord, and it was finally to like awesome to meet like a lot of them in person, get a name to their faces. So it lets you like truly connect with them. And I think that's why like I was honestly really shocked when James O'Brien was talking about favorite opponent. He like kind of stared at me when he was before he said who it was, and then he says the Noog, and I'm just like, who the fuck's the Noog? I'm like, oh wait, that's me. And then I got I got this beauty
Hell
favorite
yeah,
opponents, and there's no shitty sticker anymore. He actually gave me
got
a
a plate.
Yeah, a plate for it. So yeah, this is a really awesome trophy. Like, and also shit. I was shocked because like none of the East Coast people, like, they probably only talked to me online. They probably heard of me on maybe on Twitter, or they just flat out met me for the first time. But a lot of people felt like I, you know, deserve this. So
Matt, you live up to the hype. You live up to the hype.
Matt, AOS coaches in the chat. He wants to know who your favorite people to meet were.
that is really hard. Honestly, I can't say, but I will say I'll mention several groups. How about that, Coach? So definitely some of my favorite groups were Season of War. Meeting Ridge and Jordan in person was fucking awesome. Ridge just goes absolutely apeshit and just drinks every single night. He is the definition of white girl wasted. I won't really go much into that, but Ridge is a really fun guy. He's a lot more fun than like he's really fun on stream on his videos, but he's a lot more fun in real life. And then
And
Jordan,
to go on that, Ridge turned up on the final day, which was the RTT, still drunk, still so drunk that we are all kind of steering him away from armies because it looked like he was going to just collapse into someone's army. He could barely stand. And then he gets put into the RTT as a ringer and goes and wins it.
Yeah.
He can barely stand, and yet he goes and wins the RTT tournament on the final day.
He got paired against Marcella, one of those games, who had just come in 5th place in the grand tournament.
Yeah,
She's
just absolute legend.
Yeah, so I guess he plays better when he's drunk or really hungover. But yeah, I guess to go on, Jordan, really stoic guy. I really enjoy talking to him. He loves talking about AOS, so we really got to bond over that. And then Season of War was really cool. And then Carl the Barl, always a really fun guy and a fellow member of Asians of Sigmar, our future team. And then I met a lot of Team America, like the East Coast crowd. They're fucking awesome. I loved meeting a lot of people and going out like drinking and eating with them. Some of my personal shout outs from Team America, like the ones I really got to like bond with, are Mike Vaginos, Emma. I got to talk to Anthony Trentinelli, Noah, and then I also got to talk to Emma a lot. She's the meme queen. So yeah, that was really a good time. And then
Queen shit poster for sure.
Yeah, and then my other big shout out for East Coast people I met were Georgia Warband. So I actually met some members of Georgia Warband from LSO, which is a Texas tournament that happened in July. So then I knew some of them, and someone who is one of like the leaders of Georgia Warband. His name's Calvin. He plays Bone Splitters. He got top 10 actually with Bone Splitters, not spamming big stabbas. Really cool guy. And then shout out to him, Mackenzie, and then Josh for getting engaged that same weekend at Nova, and then just Joe Cryer, who was like hang out with, and I shared the room with him. So yeah, I mean, I will say there's so
Everyone
many.
you met by the sounds of it.
Yeah, so, well, not everybody, but like yeah. So I wish I could say who was my favorite person, but I will say yeah, everyone on the East Coast fantastic. I wish we weren't so far so we could have like East Coast versus West Coast tournaments or something like that. Because
unfortunately, the nature of space and how physical space works, yes, we are spread apart.
yeah, so I guess like again, I'm shocked that they met me for the first time in person. Oh yeah, another shout out, Mike Bullis, awesome guy. He's like one of the best TOs on the East Coast. And then
Not saying much.
yeah, so then yeah, I was shocked when I met everybody. And then I got favorite opponent award. So yeah, I guess because of like my good experiences, not even before Nova, just hanging out with like the East Coast people, I booked a ticket to Everwinter. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. Hopefully, it doesn't conflict as the same weekend as a SoCal Masters, but we'll see.
This was a bit of a homecoming for me because I've spent so much time in the Mid Atlantic, and I moved out to SoCal, and I love the group that I've been welcomed into. I guess somewhat, maybe by some people. No, just kidding. But this was a bit of a homecoming for me. So it was, there was some internal crying going on because I miss everybody out there, man. I played with them for so long. I got to see. I know you just mentioned one of the Trentinelli brothers. I got to see Nate again. That was great, and I got to hang out with Garrett and James, who I've spent so much time with. We were in a gaming group called Nova Dominatus for a while until I joined the Corsairs, and so it was great. Always love to see Jeremy at any events that we get to travel to. But yeah, it was great to see all my East Coast homies again. And hey, you never know what the future holds. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good point to end on. So,
Yeah,
thanks, Matt and Barker. Well, the Noog and Barker, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, and thanks Tom for it was really awesome seeing all of us at Nova, and it was just like, even though that I was meeting a lot of new people, it was also nice seeing really familiar faces. You guys, and then Cody from Vegas, and then Zach from Tabletop Titans, who
Heck yeah.
yeah. So I mean, it was awesome, and I guess before we end it off, West Coast, Best Coast.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tom, for putting this on. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks.